Hi, everyone. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the latest episode of the Growth Playbook with myself, Kim Clark, and my dad, Alan Beaulieu. I'm very excited that we're kicking off the new year, 2026, with a quick recap of the third quarter, right, Dad, for GDP,
Yep.
and just talking about some general economic conditions, some lessons that were learned in 25, and then a little bit towards the tail end of this week. And certainly in next week's episode, we're going to do a deeper dive in what 2026 economic landscape looks like and how to use lessons learned over the past year or two and apply those to our future planning. So, Dad, excited to start the new year. You know me, I love just kickstarting a new year every year because it's just more opportunity to learn from past us. So excited for today and next week's episodes.
I thought it was because it gave you another year to take over the world. That's what I thought.
That's my second one.
Oh, okay. Got it. Well, 2026 will be an interesting year in several respects. And we're going to talk about some broad themes that have company impact, if you will, because they're not little things that are going on and little things and little changes. So they will have an impact. And I think it's important that we get through some of that this week and next week so that companies can prepare and be ready. Um, some of them are so big, I think it's going to be easy to shrug it off and go, well, because that's easier than dealing with the big issue, right?
Mm,
Rather than preparing the company for what if, what what
yeah.
what do I do if? We don't have to worry about the boat sinking. It's not going to sink. We should have a plan just in case.
Some life rafts.
Yeah, exactly. Let's not ignore it. Uh, and I'm sure you run into this, but I do too. I run into companies that have no emergency plan. And I'm
Mm,
just kind of floored by that. They're going, well, you may not need it for 10 years, but the year you do need it, it needs to be updated as you go along, obviously. So, anyways, don't mean to ramble. What happens when you get old, but we're going to talk about some of that though. And what happens if? Are you ready for it? Kind of stuff.
I
Okay.
love it.
Third quarter GDP results, they were touted as strong. I mean, lots of people in the headlines and in the first paragraph were talking about they were strong. It was a strong number. It came in above consensus at 4.3% growth from second quarter, third quarter, and it was all that. It was 4.3% in real GDP, which means adjusted for inflation, is an impressive sounding number. And that's an annual growth rate. People should understand that's not the quarter. And it's not one that I ever used, like the annual rate. But what I liked, and this did not come from, it came from Brian Westbury, and he brought this out really well. He said, but the year over year is what we should look at. And the year over year growth, third quarter GDP in 2025 compared to the third quarter of 2024 showed a 2.3% growth rate. That's vastly different. That means that what we would call a 312 was 2.3%. And he rightfully brings out that since the end of 2019, the average is 2.4%. So it was a good, but it's not one of those ow kind of numbers. Consumer spending was strong. Business investments were strong. I mean, there were positive things, but I was concerned that people may hear that number and go, fantastic, the world's on fire, the economy's going great, we're going to end 25 with nitrous oxide, and 26 is going to be a blowout year. So I want to start it being a bummer.
A realist. We'll call it a
Well,
realist.
we could do that too. It was good, but don't get all excited. It's not like you're going to see Reiner like this. You're not going to see your cryptocurrency double in value in the next 6 months. It's just steady as she goes. It's good. Be happy, but don't start celebrating. Yeah, and
That's
that
good.
basically sums it up. Some of the things going into 2026 that I think are going to be fun to watch or talk about begins with something that sounds boring, but it's not. if you're into finance and as an economist and stuff, is that the one big beautiful act of July 2025, we already talked about the Trump accounts, which was a positive. There are some positives that in the tax code. They're not not all new things. Under the previous Trump administration, they put in the Jobs Act and the tax changes that were going to be sunsetted in 2025 for our taxes, um, income taxes, personal and corporate income taxes. And this new bill makes a lot of them permanent, which is really cool. I'm happy to hear that personally and for people in general. But let's make sure we understand what permanent means. It means permanent until it's changed. So it's probably better to change permanent to there's no sunset written into the law.
No expiration date written into it.
Right. Exactly right. And because we know as another Congress can come along and change it all. So let's just enjoy it while it lasts. And some of the big things are easier to understand, I think, when you break it down this way. A family that has a total income of $75,000, which um, I'm not belittling $75,000, but depending on where you are in the country, that's not enough to pay the rent. I mean,
Cannot get a house for that here in New Hampshire.
you know, or Maine or Connecticut or. So the existing tax brackets were made permanent. What that means to that family that's making 75,000 is that their effective tax rate stays at 6% instead of going to 10% or 12%. So it's a real savings for them. And on top of that, their long-term standard deduction for that family stays at 31,000. I think it's 31.5. So they get a large deduction and they still have the benefit of the small tax rate. So they're protected, if you will, as opposed to staggering because the old tax law came back into effect. All of a sudden they could be out $1,000, which, and I don't mean anything bad sounding by this, but you and I would go, well, that's a pain in the neck, but to a lot of people it'd be like, what?
Yeah.
So
Excuse me.
excuse me. So I think that's really good for people. And I'm excited on another level that long-term capital gain rates are remain fixed and favorable. The state tax minimum is staying at $40 million for married filing jointly, um, which is good news. That means that 90% of the people in this country, when they die, will be paying no estate tax, which is what I don't think there should be one unless you're perhaps mega rich. And even then, I debate with myself whether that's fair or not. And so it's good news for a lot of people. And um, it's not going to increase a lot of spending, but it's going to keep spending from decreasing because all of a sudden the government's not taking more. There's a nifty provision for over 65s where you get an increase of $2,000 in your standard deduction. And there's even another one where if you're under an income level, you get another increase in your deduction of 12,500. I mean, so all of a sudden there's some nice breaks for seniors who are trying to get by. All of this is subject to income limitations, and all of this, has the usual. If you make over this, you're not going to get as much of that. So it's all that sliding scale. But there's certainly good news, and one of the ones I particularly like is SALT tax deduction, state and local taxes, which in New Hampshire, property taxes are a big deal here.
Mhm.
It was going to go to $10,000 this for 2025 taxes was the max that you could deduct. Now it's going to go back to $40,000.
Oh.
That's a big deal. People that
Hmm.
own big houses around here or multiple homes or whatever, all of a sudden you're getting a break, which matters. And because those taxes are being paid to state and local governments, it's not like you're not paying taxes. You're just not going to be penalized by the Fed for doing that. So all kinds of good stuff. No taxes on tips and overtime, given the income limitations, will help some people. So there's something along here that just made me think, glad for this. This is a good way to start the year, realizing that when we file our tax returns for 25, we're not going to get whacked. And through 29. It's looking pretty good.
I'll take it.
Yeah, yeah. And most people don't stay awake at night thinking about their taxes, but if you're getting towards retirement, you need to be, and some of our audience is going to be doing that. You got to do your tax planning and your estate planning and all the rest of that. And so this helps a lot of stability come as opposed to the mayhem through massive tax changes. So I like it. It's good news. Um, let's move on to something else. This one is one of those big things, Kim. I'd be interested in what you're hearing and what your opinion is on this. AI is certainly a big subject.
Mhm.
And I've been reading from a number of sources, different things. Some people say that AI stocks are in danger, stock values like NVIDIA and OpenAI and such are in danger because there's no, the demand there doesn't warrant the stock values. And for instance, I'll give you an example. This is from Scott Galloway. The NVIDIA is saying that their sales are going to increase 800 billion more over the next 5 years. And OpenAI, which is currently at $20 billion revenue, says they're going to increase by 180 billion over 5 years. And so they're getting more space. And I mean, it just feeds into Microsoft, which feeds into data centers and which feeds into all kinds of chip makers and all kinds of stuff. And the talk out there, and I'm not giving professional advice because I don't give professional advice on whether you should own this stock or not. The disclaimer is you talk to Clark at Bellin or his team at Bellwether, you talk to your favorite wealth advisor. I'm not giving you stock advice. This is being recorded. I am not giving you stock advice. I do not want to call from the SEC. But here's the economist slant on it. What happens if China's AI, which costs less to produce and has some virtues to it, um, is unleashed? All of a sudden, OpenAI and NVIDIA and the AI in this country is finding it hard to compete because China's AI is very capable and is open source, which is nice for a lot of businesses. And it is produced in a country that produces a lot more electricity than we do at a lesser price. So, I mean, all of a sudden we could find that the United States was, which, if you will, birth this subject, is handing over the leadership, not handing over, having the leadership taken away from them by China. And that raises all kinds of other spectrums. Will we forbid the use of AI that is sourced from China? Because if it comes in, does it permeate our businesses and all of a sudden we have built-in spies? Are we being fed crappy information? I mean, all of this is like, holy smokes, this thing could be amazingly powerful or amazingly bad. And I have a Chinese bias where I don't think they would hesitate to have it infiltrate everything that we do, much like TikTok did, um, for an eventual political gain in a war against the United States.
And I mean, that's exactly where my head went when you first mentioned China and their AI capabilities and stuff is would it be trusted? And would businesses even want it? Whether the government bans it or not, would US companies feel comfortable using a Chinese sourced AI tool? If I know a lot of my clients that are using AI for varying reasons, they all have private subscriptions. They don't use general open source or like the general available on the internet because they're afraid of their like the data that they're sharing or their IP or their whatever the case may be, their private thoughts or the book that they're writing or whatever the case is going to be readily available for others to use. So if there's already that sensitivity that exists in the marketplace, I wonder if it would even need to be like necessarily banned by the government or if people would even just not feel comfortable with that concept in general.
That's an exceptionally good point. Then you ask yourself, the person paying for the expensive private and the cost of having that in your business can put you at a competitive disadvantage for those that are paying 50% less, 70% less for the AI than you are. If it's a cost, the major cost in your business, that's hard to deal with. It's
Mm.
It can get real difficult. I was reading something in researching all this that, and I'd quote the source if I could remember, but I've been reading so much on this stuff that some companies said today AI is used in this part of my business, and it was a particular silo and is doing a great job. In 3 years, I think it'll be running the business. I think everybody working there must go,
Wait a second, how do we unplug it?
right, exactly.
I don't know what happened. It just stopped working. Yeah, and I don't know regarding costs and the different use cases, because there's all sorts of different use cases for AI. I know, again, the people that I know that are paying for the private subscriptions, the cost is minimal compared to other components and other costs of other business work. And I think a lot of the cost savings, again, in my very small circle, is time. So how valuable is your time? So if we are spending 50% more, but have peace of mind that it's not being sourced from a Chinese entity, how much is that peace of mind worth? And then your time that it's saving you. And people might justify it that way when they start during their decision-making process.
Agree 100%. It's a question of the more that it's in your company, how much bigger and
Mm.
more expensive does it get? And that's where it's good to be retired. I can unplug, but, which is a theme you might not want to repeat in the hospital, you know.
I'll try to avoid those words.
That's right. But it just struck me as a fascinating discussion where for a lot of places, open AI at a really affordable cost could prove to be a great advantage, which could hurt some companies. And I agree with everything you said, but to our point about 20 lessons and thoughts about 2026, where we're going, make sure that as a company that you're working these scenarios. If all of a sudden you're using AI more and more in a growing use, and your competitors are paying a fraction of what you're paying for something that may work a little better, um, you got to work those numbers, is all that I'm saying, to make sure that you can justify the walls and doing what you're doing. Because you're putting your company's financials at risk, and the other way you're putting your company's financials at risk. So have a plan and know what's going to happen.
I agree wholeheartedly. One of the annual steps that I encourage my clients to take and I learned this terminology from Joe, is your tech stack. I encourage them to do a tech stack review on an annual basis and just see if there's cost savings to be had, other technologies that your competitors are using that you should be looking into, other technologies that are available that your competitors aren't using that you could be, to give yourself an advantage. So I think the AI would also fall then into like that holistic tech stack review. And of course, I work more with the small to medium sized businesses, not your large conglomerates and stuff. But at the very least, for the small to medium size, a full tech stack review isn't very time consuming, and it can be cost saving and then help propel you forward.
Yeah, I agree. Um, and I don't want anybody to think I'm anti-AI. I'm just cautious.
Mm.
Um, a blind acceptance of that kind of powerful technology, I think, requires planning, thought, cautious steps. Uh, that's all. Uh, Data center growth is something else I want to talk about because we know in private construction, that's the thing driving private construction, that and fab plants. I mean, and they're kind of wrapped together anyway. So it's and the cloud and AI data centers and all the rest of that. And it's been big, lots of money being spent. And questions raised, well, can that continue? I
Mm.
mean, and I did not know this, and I want to share it accurately. It takes 5 to 8 years for a data center to get connected to the grid. The construction is expensive on its own, and a lot of states are looking at the electricity used and going, whoa, whoa, slow this down. South Carolina went through that. They had eight data centers on the books, not all of them under construction. And then all of a sudden, why all of a sudden, they seem to realize this is consuming a tremendous amount of electricity. And the number I read was that data centers so far take about 20% of the electricity generated in this country. Whether that's true or not, I did not verify. Just something I read from a reliable source, but nevertheless, I'm not going to stand on that hill. But that drives up electricity costs for everybody else. And that can be an issue. On the other hand, it can open up a door to small nuclear plants that are powering the data centers, which also takes years to get through regulatory hurdles. But as smaller ones, they should be safer and faster through the hurdles. Now, here's the thought. Let's say that data centers are going to continue, then that more electricity is going to be needed. Then our business friends need to find a way to service the nuclear industry. And because that's in renewable energy, it's called renewable by the government. The uranium's not renewable, but it doesn't produce carbon, and all that sort of stuff. And use uranium, you just make it into bowling balls. It glows in the night. It's fun. We use now a puck is 90% used. In the old days, uranium 10% was used, then you buried it in the mine in Nevada. Now it's 90% consumed. So it's a vastly different industry. And I think businesses should be in marketing or in their science departments or in their engineering. They need to find a way to worm somehow into the industry of the grid, uh, some electricity distribution, but certainly the grid, because data centers may not plug into distribution, but they will need electric grid and they will need a power source. And I think that's going to become more and more important. And if we see this country bring on more and more core manufacturing, more and more steel manufacturing, more and more whatever. It means more. It's not just data centers now. Nucor is putting one of these on one of their plants, and we're going to find them on plant after plant after plant because it's better than a standby power generator because it's yours. And if you can be servicing the nuclear industry over the next, dozens of years, decades, it could be a really sweet place to be. And a lot like the automobile industry, there are tier one suppliers, tier two, tier three, and you can be a tier three supplier to the nuclear industry and have a nice party of business just cooking right. Don't say cooking right along. That's probably.
It's fun watching you catch yourself because as it was coming out of your mouth, I was like, oh wow.
That's one of the areas I'm excited about. I'm not calling for the doom of data centers, but slower growth, but the application of the small nuclear generation is exciting. And it wouldn't it be interesting to imagine a world where you could have a very safe, personal nuclear powered center at your home so that it works. The snow covers my solar panels, it stops producing electricity, and that's a problem here in New England because it means in the winter my electricity production is cut way back. Got a little nuclear plant in the backyard is perfectly safe, and you just make sure the kids don't play on it. And I don't know, it's things I dream about. I think it's a fun industry to be thinking about as we go forward.
Yeah, it hadn't contemplated or put a thought around a personal, like home, small, safe use case one. A question though that I have for you regarding businesses playing in that space more or looking for opportunities and ways to. I had a conversation somewhat recently with a couple of my manufacturing clients about this. And one of the comments had been that there's so many, again, working with, say, smaller to medium-sized businesses. So you had mentioned Nucor, so not the Nucor sizes of the world, but um, so many regulatory hoops to jump through and so many like licenses and all these different things that need to occur in order to be able to participate in that space. And it almost seemed overwhelming, the thought process of everything that one would need to go to in order to positioning themselves to being able to play in that space. And the common feedback was that and the amount of time that, well, Kim, that's going to be 5, 6, 7 years before we're even allowed to participate. And so I need to invest all this time and money up front over the next 5 to 7 years to even be able to position myself to be able to play in that space, say 7 years from now. Is it worth it? That's the question. So I guess that's my a question for you, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on that perspective.
Sure. And it's a really good perspective. Here's my answer. You don't have to be the first one in. So you don't need to spend the next 5 to 7 years, with doing all the hard work, because the more that this becomes every day, the more it becomes standardized regulation, standardized procedure, like anything else. There are regulations involved in natural gas, and there are regulations involved in anything around you. And we just don't see a lot of it because it's invisible, because it's been so standardized, become so normal. So instead of being the first person in 5 or 7 years, tell yourself, I'm going to wait a few years. I'm going to keep my eyes open, keep my eyes on it. And I can be the second person, third person, fifth person in. It doesn't really matter, because there's going to be lots of space. I just have to be ready to be wanting to move into that area, into an industry that is settling down, that is not so Wild West, that is not so congressionally driven, just something that will be there for me. So it may be 10 years, but for I think a lot of our clients, it's like, have hope. There's new stuff out there that's going to be fun and exciting, and that can provide a really good future. Um, and as you and I know, at night solar power isn't really generated. So,
What? Not from the moon?
that's right. So this is one of those things that can really be a game changer. Uh, there's no pipes involved, so you don't have to worry about pipes breaking. I mean, there's no foreign source of oil, although we have a large domestic source, and we'll leave it at that for the moment. But those are the types of things. What are the game changers? And it's fun to keep your eyes open and look up beyond your company and what you do now, and say, where might we be as we go forward? Um, I'm excited about that stuff. A lot of people think the depression that's coming, that you and I have talked about, and Brian and I wrote a book on, or is going to be a downer. For a lot of people, it will. I'm not saying it's not, but it's also going to be a turning point. And I think we're going to be amazed. You'll be amazed at what happens because of the depression, and what industries and ideas and things are birthed as we come out the other side, especially if it's a world that is fairly disrupted, a world that is more unstable. All of a sudden, we accept new ideas and we move forward because they bring us stability and growth potential. And I think we're going to see a fair amount of that as we come to the second a decade from now. We're going to start seeing more of that come out to light, come out to play.
Your mind went exactly where my next question was taking us as well. Is this a pocket for during the Depression? So during the 2030s, for, like you said, they don't have to jump on it now. They don't have to be the first into this space, but just keep it in mind, be open to it 5, 7 years from now, right? You can be the third or the fourth. Like, does that potential, would that potentially fall in the timing of the depression, where that could be a means for them offsetting some of that downside pressure on their business?
It may, it depends on where they are in terms of the supply chain and in the process of nuclear power. The difficulty comes as it takes so long to build a nuclear plant. So there have to be these mini plants that are, I don't want to say bolt on like it's that easy, but that are, don't take 7 years for the actual construction to occur. And if that's what comes about over the next 5 to 7 years, then after that it becomes, an entirely different world. And that's what to watch out for. So it may not help a lot of people in the depression, but it may provide that juice coming out coming out of the depression.
You're on a roll.
you know. Oh well, I that has me pretty excited. I know we have other things for next week that we want to talk about. I want us to be talking, if you don't mind, next week about China, uh, what the economy is likely to look like in 2026. I want to talk about, let's call it some subtle things going on between Russia, China, and the US and where that might lead. And then I want to talk about U.S. manufacturing and where's the U.S. headed as a manufacturing nation and as an economic power and some things like that. I think will give our listeners some things to think about and some encouragement. But if you don't mind, I want to end today with something I know is near and dear to your heart. This is something that you will personally be excited about. It's Waymo.
Woohoo!
I know, huh?
My favorite. I do have lots of opinions. I just don't know if I would call it my favorite.
Well, I know it's something gets you excited, so I
Yeah. Fired up, maybe.
fired up. Yeah, fired up is a good way to put it. But here's something, and I don't like driverless cars. I like the Waymo ride we had. That was fun. But for me to get into a driverless car to go to New York City or Boston or to our place in Maine, whatever it happens to be, I'm not ready for that yet. Okay, I'm just not. But let's compare Waymo driverless cars to human-driven cars for just a moment. And the Waymo, just Waymo and their technology, we're not talking about Tesla's technology now. We're talking about Waymo's technology. In a Waymo, you're 96% less likely to get into a vehicle-to-vehicle crash than if it's driven by a human being. You're 92% less pedestrian industries will occur from Waymos than if it's an Uber, not picking on Uber, a human-driven vehicle, and 90% less bodily injury claims coming from Waymo than from human-driven vehicles. Just kind of a, huh,
It's good data.
Waymo can't get drunk or stoned
It's true.
or distracted or play with its phone, you
They're
know?
on their phone or do their makeup while they're driving and
Yeah.
everything else. I know, I don't know why my brain has such a hard time with the concept of the driverless vehicle. It's just so crazy to me when we were in it and just see, I'm like, well, what if it has a software update as I'm going 60 miles an hour over this bridge or something else? But I'm sure there's safeties in place and everything else for that. I think um, maybe just showing my age being more resistant to it than my one younger brother. I do have an older brother that's really big into them, but um, that was for you, Joe.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I think the issue is control.
Yeah.
And trusting new technology is not easy. I mean, uh, I'm not particularly impressed with a lot of new technology that tells me to just trust it because there are dangers that aren't talked about. So, but when I see numbers like that when it comes to Waymo, I go, I'm getting another one, and I wouldn't have to tell it to not talk to me. I wouldn't have to tell it. I don't want to chat. Just be.
Well, and I could see it as like you said, like in Phoenix, taxi alternative versus cross country, some across states, whatever the case may be. I think, and just like anything, I feel like we get used to it after a while. So maybe it's just because it is so new and so such a foreign concept where I get my reaction of, no, this is all bad. But we did have one ride and it was perfectly safe, and then we had a second and that was perfectly safe. So I would say we're two for two.
That's it. Exactly. Somebody was talking about putting a humanoid robot in the driver's seat to make people feel better. Uh, and I don't know if that would do it either.
No, I just think of Will Smith and I, Robot.
That's right. Oh, well. So hopefully we've given folks some things to think about as we go into 26. And next week we're going to cover some other themes, which will include what I've already discussed about and probably some darker things that we need to keep our eyes open to as we go through the years ahead.
Yeah, the great meeting today or great episode today, Dad. I really enjoy going through all the different topics that we had and looking forward to next week's and also adding to it, like how can we take lessons learned from the past and apply them to the coming year to maximize our opportunities in the year to come. So thank you everyone for joining us today, and we look forward to you tuning back in to next week's episode. See you later, Dad. Bye.
Bye. Take care.